welcome back to this edition of Inside Sports, your high school preview, playoff preview. And I'm your host, Chris Marks. Thanks for being here today. Last segment, we talked about the 1A, 2A, and 3A regions, all the Prince George's County teams involved in those playoffs and who we think are going to get through on those sides. Now we move to the 4A region, where we have 4 Prince George's County teams all playing against each other. Ted Black is here to help me preview these games. And one heck of a region because, as I was saying before we went to the break, the Big Four at the beginning of the year, it's the Big Four at the end of the year now playing each other in these playoffs. And 4 seed and 1 seed not separated by all that much.
No, you're right, Chris. I mean, the top 4 teams that we expected at the beginning of the season got through, and there's not much separating the top 4. And you look at Roosevelt goes in as the 1 seed. They're the only undefeated team in the league, but are they head and shoulders better than everybody else? Certainly not. Suitland is 9-1, Wise is 9-1, Flowers 7-3, and they might be the best 7-3 team in the whole state because their 3 losses were to Suitland, Roosevelt, and Wise.
And they didn't lose by all that many points combined. You see the schedule up on the screen now. It's Flowers at Roosevelt, Suitland at Wise. I want to start with the first game on that, number 4 Flowers and number 1 Wise. And we'll start talking about Flowers a little bit. They are 7-3 this year. They are the 4 seed, but they are very, very tough 4 seed.
Oh, if you look at all the regions, typically the 4 seed is a toss because they're going to get typically trounced by the top seed in the region. But in this case, that's not the case. Flowers, with a narrow loss to Roosevelt the first time they played, they go back there this weekend. And, certainly it's not a given that Roosevelt's going to get through. They're favored, being the top seed, and they beat them before. But, Flowers with 3 close losses to Roosevelt, Suitland, and Wise on the road, all 3 games. And obviously, if they win this weekend at Roosevelt, they have to go back on the road again next weekend. So, it's a tall order for Flowers. But there's not much separating those 4 teams, as you've seen by the scores. And the win-loss records don't really justify the difference between the overall quality of those teams. But Roosevelt, Flowers, it's going to be a heck of a game, as is Suitland at Wise on Saturday.
Talk about some of Flowers' top players. They have some good runners on the team. They don't have much of a passing game. Will that hurt them?
Roosevelt's probably got a little more balance, with Sean Petty being able to throw the ball and run the ball. Their running game is solid, obviously. Defensively, they don't give up a lot. And Flowers, Jonathan Holland has done an okay job at quarterback. I think their secret weapon is the tight end, Monty Taylor. He's a big target. He knows how to get open. I think he's one of the keys to possibly getting past Roosevelt. Petty is going to guard him, oddly enough. You got the Roosevelt quarterback when he's on defense is going to play linebacker, and he'll guard Taylor underneath. But, there's a guy that Flowers could utilize either as a weapon to throw to or as a decoy, to maybe open things up for the running backs. The running backs are down a little bit from previous years. In previous years, Flowers had 2 of the top running backs in the league. This year, Coach Mike Mayo would tell you, his running backs were new to everything. The quarterback's back, and the tight end solid. The running backs are okay. It's going to be a matter of executing in tight situations and, not making mistakes. A team that makes mistakes is going to go home this weekend.
We saw a little bit of the Roosevelt highlights when we were just here on the set. They have some really top-notch players, and they are, of course, led by Sean Petty, a guy you talked about a little bit earlier. And what kind of influence could he have on which way this game goes?
Well, Sean, hasn't had the healthiest season, first of all. He's a big, solid quarterback. He's good throwing. He's good keeping the ball. He's not quickest around the edges, but he can throw the ball deep. He's accurate. Throwing the ball deep and over the middle. He's got good receivers. Tamlin Antoine, I would say, being the best of the group. Tyrone Timoni is another solid one. So they play a lot of controlled possession games. They're going to throw the ball short. But Sean will take some shots down the field. And on the defensive side, they ask him to do a lot. At linebacker, he's got to play the run. And against Flowers, he's going to have to guard the tight end, Monty Taylor. So there's a lot on his shoulders going into this game. and you're talking about a guy that missed some games with an a foot injury, and he's 100% now, but they're going to ask him to do a lot this weekend on both sides of the ball.
When we get to the other matchup, and we'll start with the number 3 seed, Suitland, who was undefeated heading into last week. They fall to number 3, so they have to go on the road. But they have a heck of a quarterback in Naima Washington and a heck of a wide receiver in Jacobs.
Oh, yes. Definitely like Roosevelt, Suitland's one of the more balanced teams in the league. They depend a lot on running the ball with Anthony Squire, who I believe end up as the county's leading rusher this year. But you're right, Naima Washington can make plays with his arm downfield. Good pocket passer. Jacobs, certainly is fast. Wide receiver Tavon Jacobs, can get open if he's not covered, and so they bring balance to the table. Oddly enough, they did not play Wise, during the regular season this year. So first meeting between the two teams since last year when they met in the Lynch Classic to open the season. Not much has changed between the two teams. I mean, they're both balanced. I think Suitland's a little more balanced. I haven't seen as much from a passing attack from Wise as expected this year. But, Suitland is a lot like Roosevelt. They're pretty balanced. And typically, they're not going to beat themselves.
Wise has a heck of a running game. Here you are, you see him on the screen right here, with Bethea, who just can really put the ball in the end zone.
Oh, correct. Production was down a little bit this year because, he missed some games with an injury. He got hurt in the Roosevelt game midway through the season, sat out a few games, when they were playing a lot of the lighter competition throughout the region. But he's back at full strength now, and they're certainly going to rely on him, to make plays on the ground. The one thing that could work against them is, whether or not the quarterback can make plays down the field. He's got to be able to show that he can throw the ball downfield. Otherwise, Suitland's going to, have 9 guys in the box and look to take away Bethea. So, interesting matchup. Could go either way. And Wise by winning last weekend and Suitland losing, Wise at least gets to host this game. So.
Wise has a newer, nicer field, so that might not be that big of an advantage because Suitland gets to come and play on that nice field. And the quarterback, like you said, could be the defining moment, the difference maker in that game because Washington really can throw the football.
Yeah, he can throw the football, and Squire is an effective running back. So him and Bethea, pretty much neutralize each other. The difference could be that Washington can make plays looking downfield for his brother, who's a wide receiver, and for Tavon Jacobs, who's a big weapon, and whether or not Wise can match that when they have the ball.
So who do you like in these games? Let's get a little bit of a prediction right here before we move on to the rest of the 4A, because this is not just the only region that's competitive. There's a lot of good football teams in the 4A classification.
Yeah, I think of the 4 regions, you can probably find a solid favorite in at least 2 of the other regions. In this one, you can't. First of all, Wise and Suitland didn't face each other during the regular season. They each only have 1 loss. Both lost to Roosevelt. Roosevelt, you'd have to say, is the favorite. They're undefeated. They get to host this weekend. If they win, they get to host next weekend. But Flowers could throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. At 7-3, they are not more than a touchdown underdog against any of these teams. So if they knock off Roosevelt, well, then the Suitland-Wise winner, would host the region final, and Flowers would have to go there. And Flowers lost to both of those teams by a point. So, any of those 4 teams could get through. Again, the road is a little bit tougher for Flowers because they'd have to go on the road twice again against 3 teams that they've already played, on the road against during the season. And Suitland, Roosevelt, and Wise, all fairly close. Unfortunately, Suitland and Wise didn't play each other, so you don't really have a great barometer on those 2 teams, other than the fact that they both lost to Roosevelt and they both beat Flowers in close games. So, realistically, it's probably either Roosevelt or Suitland.
Okay, that's a good pick. Now we go up to the 4A North, where Poly is the class of that region.
Poly's the favorite to get through. Catonsville is going to present some trouble for them, but Poly would host if those two teams meet in that region final. Poly opened the season by manhandling Duval in the first week of the season, and that in turn prevented Duval from making the playoffs this year. But Poly's had a good year, and they beat Dunbar along the way, and they're favored to win that region. But Catonsville is not that far below them.
We go to the 4A East region. Maybe the team to beat in the entire state resides out of Anne Arundel County, and that's Old Mill.
Yeah, Old Mill has really had a successful season. They're still undefeated going into the region. They're certainly favored to win that region. And I'd say overall, if you look at the big picture, they're probably favored to win the 4A state title this year. Again, they're nothing really fancy about them. They're fairly balanced, but they're run-oriented. Defense is strong, and chances are they'll either get Arundel or North Point in the final, and more than likely, I think it's going to be North Point. But I don't see them getting beat prior to the state championship game.
And then Quince Orchard, 4A West.
4A West, 4A West is Quince Orchard. That region had been strong in the past. When Seneca Valley was there, Damascus was in there. But yeah, Quince Orchard looks like the best team in that region. And more than likely, I think they probably end up seeing Old Mill in the championship game.
I mean, that's one heck of a Final Four in the 4A if all holds are true. And it goes, you have Old Mill, you have Eleanor Roosevelt, you have Quince Orchard, you have, just a heck of a Poly. Yeah. You have a heck of a battle going on there.
That is four really good, winners. And like I said, Old Mill being undefeated, you got to look at them as the favorite at this point. And then, Quince Orchard, coming out of 4A West is going to be tough to knock off. And then Poly and whoever comes out of 4A South, it could be Roosevelt, it could be Suitland. Maybe it's Wise, maybe even it's Flowers, but that region, the 4A South region, could be any of those four teams, as we know. But and then 4A North could be Poly or Catonsville. But in the other divisions, in the other two regions, you look at Quince Orchard looks like a cinch, Old Mill looks like a cinch. That kind of leads me to believe that those teams will be hosting all the way through, and they'll probably end up meeting in the state championship.
Okay, Ted, thanks for being here today and joining me on this high school preview. Thanks for joining us here on Inside Sports, and we will have more high school football later on as we see where our Prince George's County teams are going to end up and who's going to win the state championship. Stay tuned and join us again here on Inside Sports.